Okay, so you want to live like the British royal family. Palaces, private estates, a personal art collection, a security detail that follows you everywhere, and staff who lay out your breakfast. It sounds like the most expensive lifestyle on earth. And in one sense, it is. But here's the strange part. The royal family is not really a family that spends its own money on a life of luxury. It's an institution that sits on top of one of the largest property portfolios in Britain, hands almost all the profit to the government, and then receives a fraction of it back as a salary to do a job. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how that arrangement works, where every pound comes from, what it actually costs to keep the whole thing running, and why the numbers behind the monarchy are far stranger than the crowns and carriages suggest. Let's start with the headline figure, the one that gets argued about every single year. It's called the sovereign grant. This is the pot of public money that funds the official work of the monarchy. For the financial year 2024 to 2025, the sovereign grant was £86.3 million. That covers the upkeep of the occupied royal palaces, the staff who run the royal household, official travel for engagements at home and abroad, and the ongoing decade-long project to resurface Buckingham Palace, which on its own accounts for tens of millions a year. Now, most people assume this is simply taxpayer money handed over as a gift. The reality is more complicated, and it's the single most important thing to understand about royal finances. The sovereign grant is calculated as a percentage of the profits of something called the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate is an enormous property portfolio, valued at around £15.5 billion. It includes much of Regent Street in central London, nearly 300,000 acres of rural land, over half the coastline of England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and almost the entire seabed within 12 miles of the coast. That last part matters enormously, because those seabed rights are where offshore wind farms are built, and in recent years, the Crown Estate has earned staggering sums leasing them out. Here's the deal that has been in place since 1760. The monarch surrenders all the profits of the Crown Estate to the Treasury. In exchange, the government pays the sovereign grant back to fund official duties. Crucially, the king does not personally pocket the Crown Estate's profits. In 2024, the Crown Estate handed over more than £1 billion to the Treasury. The sovereign grant, at £86.3 million, is a small slice of that. So when someone says the monarchy costs the taxpayer money, the accurate picture is that the Crown surrenders far more to the public purse than it receives back. Whether that arrangement is fair, or whether the land should simply belong to the state outright, is a genuine political debate, and reasonable people land on both sides of it. The size of the grant is set to change. Because Crown Estate profits jumped so dramatically thanks to offshore wind, the formula was adjusted, and the grant rose to £132.1 million for 2025 to 2026, and to roughly £137.9 million for 2026 to 2027. A review of the whole system began in 2026, once the Buckingham Palace resurfacing work nears completion, so these numbers are a moving target rather than a fixed cost. Okay, so that's the official money. But living like the royal family isn't only about the public grant. There's a second stream, and this is where personal income enters the picture. The monarch receives private income from an estate called the Duchy of Lancaster. This is a portfolio of land and property, mostly in the north of England, worth around £654 to £679 million. The king receives the annual net surplus it generates, which for 2024 to 2025 was about £24.4 million. This money isn't the sovereign grant. It funds expenses that public money isn't meant to cover. The heir to the throne has an equivalent. The Prince of Wales, currently Prince William, holds the Duchy of Cornwall, an estate of around 130,000 acres across more than 20 counties, valued at over £1.2 billion. It was created in 1337 by Edward III, specifically to fund the heir to the throne, and it has passed from heir to heir ever since. For 2024 to 2025, the Duchy of Cornwall produced a distributable surplus of £9 million. That single sum covers the official, charitable and private expenses of William, his wife, and their 3 children. So while it's often reported as a salary, it's really a working estate whose income the heir manages and lives on. Now, layer these together and you start to see the structure. Public money for the public role, private estate income for personal and family costs. And beneath all of that, a layer of genuinely private wealth, inherited fortune and personal investments that the family does not have to disclose and largely doesn't. Estimates of King Charles's personal fortune tend to land somewhere around 1.8 to 2 billion pounds. But because so much is private and inseparable from the institution, any figure comes with heavy uncertainty. Anyone quoting a precise number is guessing. So now let's talk about what it actually costs to run this life, because the expenses are as unusual as the income. Start with the palaces. The royal household maintains the occupied royal palaces, and Buckingham Palace alone has been undergoing a 10-year resurfacing program, replacing miles of ancient electrical cabling and pipework, installing lifts and modern services throughout. In a single year, that meant almost 9 miles of new electrical cable and over 12 miles of new mechanical pipework going in. When your home is a working state building the size of a small town, maintenance isn't a weekend project. It's a permanent line item costing tens of millions annually. Then there's staff. The royal household employs hundreds of people, from private secretaries to cooks, cleaners, and gardeners. Staffing is one of the largest single costs, and it behaves like any other employer's payroll. In 2024 to 2025, wages rose in line with the national living wage, and employer national insurance contributions climbed too, pushing costs up just as they would for any business. Travel is another expense most people never think about. The family carries out over 1,900 public engagements a year in the UK and overseas. Getting ahead of state and working royals to those events, often with security, means helicopters, chartered flights, and official cars, all funded through the grant and reported line by line. Even the correspondence has a cost. In 1 year, the household received over 123,000 items of mail, including more than 41,000 well-wishing messages after the King and the Princess of Wales announced their cancer diagnoses. Replying to that volume of post ran to about £5 million in postage, printing, and stationery alone. But here's the biggest cost that isn't even in the official accounts, and it's the one that makes this lifestyle genuinely impossible to replicate. Security. The protection of the royal family is not paid for out of the sovereign grant. It comes from Home Office budgets delivered through the Metropolitan Police, and the figures are deliberately never disclosed for security reasons. Public estimates range wildly, from a few million to as much as £100 million a year. On top of that sits the cost of policing major royal events. The coronation of King Charles, for example, cost the taxpayer around £72 million. So the sticker price of the monarchy, the 86 million grant, is only part of the true cost once you add security and one-off state occasions. Now we get to the part that generates the most heat, and it's worth explaining carefully rather than dramatically. Tax. The monarch is, under old constitutional principle, not legally bound by tax law unless a statute specifically says so, and most don't. Historically, this meant the sovereign paid no income tax, no capital gains tax, and no inheritance tax at all. That changed in 1993. After public anger over the cost of repairing Windsor Castle following a fire, Queen Elizabeth II agreed voluntarily to pay income tax and capital gains tax on her private income and gains. That voluntary arrangement, recorded in a Memorandum of Understanding on Royal Taxation, continues today. King Charles voluntarily pays income tax on his Duchy of Lancaster income. and Prince William pays income tax on his Duchy of Cornwall income, both after official expenses are deducted. The exact sums are not published. The most contentious piece is inheritance tax. Ordinary estates in the UK pay inheritance tax at 40% on everything above a threshold of £325,000. But under that same 1993 arrangement, assets passing from one sovereign to the next are exempt. So when Queen Elizabeth died in 2022, the private fortune she left to King Charles, including estates like Balmoral and Sandringham, passed without inheritance tax. The stated reasoning is that some of these private homes also serve official functions, and that taxing the monarchy's assets across each generation would slowly erode the institution's independence. It's worth noting this exemption is a matter of policy in a memorandum, not a permanent law, which means in principle a future government could revisit it. Every other member of the royal family, by contrast, pays inheritance tax exactly like any other citizen. The blanket exemption belongs to the sovereign alone. So let's pull all of this together and answer the real question. Could you actually live like the royal family? Add up the pieces and the answer is that almost nobody could, and not for the reason you'd expect. It isn't the palaces or the staff, though those cost tens of millions. It's that the lifestyle is inseparable from the institution. The income comes from centuries-old estates that can't be bought, only inherited by position. The largest single cost, security, is provided by the state and would be unaffordable privately. The tax arrangements exist specifically because the assets are tied to the role, not the person. Strip away the crown and none of the financial machinery makes sense. Look at the whole balance sheet and a clearer picture emerges. The Crown Estate surrenders over £1 billion a year to the Treasury. The public funds the working monarchy with a grant of roughly 86 to 138 million, depending on the year. Two ancient duchies, worth well over £1 billion combined, fund the personal and family lives of the king and the heir, and both pay voluntary income tax on that. Security costs an undisclosed amount on top, likely tens of millions. And a private fortune passes down the line untaxed under a decades-old agreement. Whether that arrangement is a bargain for the country, given the tourism and soft power the monarchy is argued to generate, or an outdated privilege that should be reformed, is a question people in Britain genuinely disagree on. And the debate is louder now than it has been in years. What isn't in dispute is the shape of the machine. The royal family doesn't live like the richest people in Britain by spending a private fortune freely. They live inside an institution that owns enormous wealth it cannot personally sell, hands most of the proceeds to the state, and receives back exactly enough to keep the show running. It is, in the end, the only lifestyle on earth you cannot buy at any price. You can only be born into it.